It's just a thin cotton sheet weighing less than 1 gram, but the entire world is willing to trade almost everything to get it. We're talking about the US dollar, the most powerful currency on Earth. And to make a $100 bill, the US government spends less than 17 cents. So what creates that massive gap? Not gold, not silver, it's trust. And to protect that trust, every bill has to become a security masterpiece that is almost impossible to copy. Today, let's go inside the largest money printing machine in the world, where every dollar bill is created through secrets the US government has protected for more than 160 years. Everything will be revealed in this video. Few people realize that the modern US dollar was born from a crisis. In 1861, the Civil War broke out. The federal government was running out of money and was forced to print paper currency for the first time in American history to pay for the war. Those bills were called greenbacks because of the distinctive green color on the back. And from that moment, an entirely new monetary system was born. But before that, the United States was a complete financial mess. More than 10,000 different types of legally issued banknotes were circulating at the same time, not including countless counterfeit bills. Every state and private bank printed its own money, and no one truly had control over the system. If the Civil War was the event that gave birth to federal paper money, then 1913 was when the system truly matured. The Federal Reserve was established, and starting in 1914, the Federal Reserve note officially became the nation's main currency, with denominations ranging from $1 to $10,000. Then, in 1929, the entire bill design was reduced by 30% to the modern size of 6.14 by 2.61 inches, both to reduce production costs and to standardize currency across the country. And here's a fascinating fact that very few people know. Every US dollar bill issued since 1861 is still legally valid today. Not a single one has ever been officially canceled or invalidated, even after more than 160 years. Most people call it paper money, but in reality, there isn't a single gram of actual paper inside a US dollar bill. Instead, every bill is made from a blend of 75% cotton and 25% linen, almost like fabric used for clothing. That's why a dollar bill does not fall apart when it accidentally goes through a washing machine, while a normal sheet of paper would be destroyed within seconds. This material also creates the distinctive texture that almost everyone instantly recognizes the moment they touch it, even if they've never really thought about it before. All of this material is supplied exclusively by a single company, Crane Paper, which has worked with the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing since the early days of the Federal Reserve System. Possessing this material without government authorization is illegal, but the material itself is only the outer layer. During production, tiny red and blue security fibers are randomly embedded directly inside the bill before any printing process even begins. This is the first layer of security that most people have never noticed. The result is a banknote with an average lifespan of up to 6.6 years. For the $100 bill, that lifespan is even longer because it is used less frequently in everyday transactions. Before a dollar bill is ever printed, someone has to sit down and draw it by hand. That is not a metaphor. Every design element on a US dollar bill, from the portrait and decorative patterns to the smallest details, is first sketched manually by artists at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. After that, an engraver uses a special pen called a pantograph to transfer the design onto a steel plate, one line at a time, completely by hand. The entire process can take up to 8 days for just a single printing plate. Those steel plates are then chrome-plated, so they can withstand the enormous pressure used during printing, allowing millions of bills to be produced without the plates wearing down. Each bill is also not engraved as one complete piece. The portrait, text, and border patterns are created separately, and then combined like a giant puzzle through a technique called siderography. From one original master plate, hundreds of identical printing plates can then be reproduced for mass production. And here's an incredible number. Since 1957, a single printing plate has been able to print 32 bills at the same time on one large sheet of paper. Back in 1861, that number was only 4 bills. That means production efficiency increased nearly 8 times. A US dollar bill is not created with just one printing process. It has to go through 3 completely different layers of printing, and without any one of them, the bill would never be allowed into circulation. For denominations of $2 and higher, the first step is offset printing. Rollers coated with magnetic ink print on both sides of the bill at the same time, creating subtle background colors that are almost invisible to the naked eye. The $1 bill skips this step entirely, which is why it feels noticeably different from the other bills in your wallet. This is the process that gives the bill its soul. Massive machines nearly 15 meters long and weighing up to 70 tons force ink into engraved grooves on steel plates under enormous pressure before transferring it onto the bill. The result is ink that dries with a slightly raised texture, creating the rough feeling you notice when running your fingers across the portrait or numbers. This is also one of the most effective anti-counterfeiting features because it is extremely difficult to copy. Every hour, these machines produce around 10,000 sheets, but the intaglio ink itself takes up to 3 days to dry completely. This is the step that makes every bill unique. The machine prints a different serial number on each note, adds the seals of the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve, and prints denomination numbers using color-shifting ink that changes from copper to green when the bill is tilted. And after every 500 prints, workers stop the machines and manually inspect a sheet to make sure everything is perfectly accurate. If the printing process is already this complicated, what is hidden inside a dollar bill is even more incredible. First comes microprinting. On the $100 bill, if you look very closely at Benjamin Franklin's collar, you will find the phrase, "The United States of America," printed so small that it is almost invisible. This is not decoration. It is a trap. Ordinary photocopiers cannot reproduce that level of sharp detail, so if the text looks blurry, it is almost certainly counterfeit money. Next is the security thread, a thin plastic strip embedded directly inside the material itself, not glued onto the surface. Under ultraviolet light, each denomination glows in a different color. The $5 bill glows blue, while the $20 bill glows green. The human eye normally cannot see this, but bank money scanners can. On the $100 bill, there is also the blue 3D security ribbon running vertically across the note. This is a stereoscopic security technology that creates the illusion of movement when the bill is tilted. To duplicate it, counterfeiters would need technology that only the US government possesses. Finally, there is the watermark, a faded portrait hidden inside the material itself, created during the paper-making process rather than printed afterward. This is one of the hardest security features to fake, because it is not on the surface of the bill. It exists inside the material itself. After all of those production stages, the system still does not fully trust itself. Before leaving the factory, every bill must pass through an automated inspection system called the Offline Currency Inspection System. It combines ultra-high-resolution cameras with specialized software to inspect both sides of the bill at the same time at a speed of 2.5 sheets per second. If any irregularity is detected, the bill is flagged for manual inspection by workers. Defective notes are removed individually rather than discarding the entire printed sheet, meaning the good bills on the same sheet continue through the process. That means every dollar bill in your wallet, even though it was mass-produced alongside millions of others, was once inspected as an individual piece. After inspection, the bills are cut into their standard dimensions of 6.14 by 2.61 inches, stacked into bundles of 100 notes, grouped into larger packs, then packaged into sets of 4,000 bills and placed inside specialized metal containers. Only at this point is the money officially ready to leave the factory. Leaving the factory does not mean the money immediately ends up in your wallet. All newly printed bills are loaded onto armored trucks and transported to the 12 Federal Reserve banks spread across the United States. Many bundles of cash will remain stored in vaults for years before ever entering circulation, depending on the actual needs of the economy. The Federal Reserve is the only institution with the authority to decide when that happens. From there, the money flows down to commercial banks and eventually into the hands of the public. If a bill is suspected of being counterfeit, it is sent directly to the U.S. Secret Service, the agency responsible for protecting the integrity of the U.S. dollar alongside its more widely known mission of protecting the president. But when it comes to coins, the story becomes completely different. While it costs the U.S. government only around 17 cents to produce a $100 bill, minting a 1-cent penny costs as much as 3.69 cents. In simple terms, the government loses money every time it produces its smallest coin. And as electronic payments become increasingly common, one question is becoming harder to ignore. Does the penny still deserve to exist? The next time you hold a dollar bill in your hand, take an extra second to look at it. What you are holding is not just money. It is the result of dozens of production stages, hundreds of people, and more than 160 years of constant refinement to create something that is almost impossible to counterfeit. But perhaps the most interesting part lies in the future. As electronic payments slowly replace physical cash, how much longer will those 70-ton printing machines continue running? And when the last dollar bill eventually disappears, what will we place our trust in instead? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.